The night of the encounter. Bob Hayward, a seasoned highway patrol officer from Salt Lake City, was finishing his shift on a quiet evening in his car parked outside his home on Hogan Street. As he sat there reflecting on the day's events, a tan Volkswagen Beetle passed by with its headlights off. This was unusual for the neighborhood, and Hayward's instincts kicked in. He knew every car in his vicinity, and this one was definitely not familiar. His curiosity piqued. He decided to follow the vehicle. The Volkswagen parked right in front of his neighbor's house, a residence occupied only by two teenage girls, aged 17 and 19, as their parents were away. Hayward switched on his brights to read the license plate, startling the driver, who immediately sped off. Hayward pursued the Beetle, which ran through several stop signs before finally halting at an abandoned gas station. The driver, a young man with shoulder-length dark hair, blue jeans, a black turtleneck, and a faint smell of marijuana, exited the car with his hands raised. Claiming to be a lost student who had been at a local drive-in movie, the man's story quickly unraveled when Hayward, who knew the drive-in schedule, realized no such movie was playing that night. A search of the car revealed a shocking array of items: a ski mask, crowbar, ice pick, trash bags, gloves, pantyhose, rope, and wire, with a pair of handcuffs found in the trunk. The driver was arrested for evading an officer and possessing burglary tools, although no direct evidence of a crime could be found at the time. It was only much later that Hayward would realize he had encountered America's most infamous killer, Ted Bundy. Early life and path to darkness. A troubled childhood. Theodore Robert Bundy was born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont. Raised in a seemingly normal religious household, Bundy's early life appeared stable to outsiders. He was part of a working-class family with a mother who was devoted and loving. Yet, despite this outward normalcy, Bundy exhibited disturbing behaviors from a young age. At 3 years old, he would arrange kitchen knives around his sleeping aunt. He would frequently take apart mice in the forest and attempted to drown his peers while swimming. These actions, devoid of guilt or remorse, were early signs of the darkness that lurked within him. Bundy's grandfather, whom he adored despite his abusive and violent nature, was a deacon and a collector of violent pornography, which Bundy would often sneak peeks at. This contradictory environment of religious piety and hidden brutality profoundly shaped young Ted. Adolescence and escalating behavior. In school, Bundy was a shy, introverted loner, often bullied and ostracized. His intelligence and good looks did little to help him fit in, and he often had serious outbursts of rage. During his teenage years, Bundy began a lengthy history of theft, which only escalated as he grew older. Despite these tendencies, he managed to maintain a façade of normalcy, even excelling academically. Bundy's early adulthood was marked by a series of personal and professional failures. He struggled with his social life and had difficulty maintaining relationships. However, he found a sense of freedom and independence when he purchased a tan Volkswagen Beetle in 1968. This vehicle would later become infamous as the instrument of his horrific crimes. The perfect mask over time, Bundy honed his ability to present a charming and confident exterior. He graduated in psychology and even attended law school, where his charisma helped him form relationships with numerous women. Despite his outward success, Bundy's dark desires continued to fester. His criminal activities began to escalate from theft to more violent crimes. On February 1, 1974, Bundy broke into the home of a student named Linda Ann Healy, abducting and murdering her. This marked the beginning of a series of brutal attacks that would leave a trail of terror across multiple states. Bundy's victims were typically attractive young women whom he would approach in public places, pretending to be injured or disabled to gain their trust. Once he lured them to his car, he would bludgeon them unconscious, abduct them, and drive to a secluded location where he would brutally rape, strangle, and kill them. The murders and modus operandi, a calculated killer. Bundy's modus operandi was both methodical and horrifyingly efficient. He often used his charm and good looks to put his victims at ease. Feigning injury, such as wearing a cast or using crutches, he would ask for help, carrying books or other items to his car. Once the unsuspecting women were close enough, he would overpower them, often using a blunt object to render them unconscious. Bundy's Volkswagen Beetle was meticulously altered to facilitate his crimes. He removed the passenger seat to create a space where he could lay his victims flat, out of sight. After abducting the women, he would drive to remote locations, sometimes across state lines, to avoid detection. There, he would commit his horrific acts, often returning to the crime scenes to engage in necrophilia with the decomposing bodies. A trail of terror. From Washington to Utah, Bundy's reign of terror continued unabated for years. His ability to evade capture was aided by the lack of coordinated police efforts and the absence of advanced forensic techniques like DNA analysis. The term serial killer was not yet a common part of the public lexicon, and Bundy's ability to maintain a facade of normalcy helped him stay under the radar. Bundy's crimes were not only brutal, but also marked by a chilling lack of remorse. He would often keep the personal belongings of his victims as trophies, and his narcissistic tendencies drove him to continually outsmart law enforcement. His knowledge of criminal psychology, combined with his keen understanding of law enforcement procedures, made him an exceptionally elusive target. Capture and trials. A crucial mistake. Bundy's undoing began on November 8, 1974, when he made a critical error that left a witness. Carol DaRonch, an 18-year-old woman, was approached by Bundy at a mall in Utah. Posing as a police officer named Officer Roseland, Bundy told her someone had attempted to break into her car. He convinced her to accompany him to his Volkswagen Beetle under the guise of taking her to the police station to file a report. Once inside the car, Bundy attempted to handcuff her, but DaRonch managed to escape and report the incident to the real police. This encounter provided law enforcement with a crucial lead. Bundy's vehicle description matched reports from other crime scenes, and DaRonch's testimony led to his inclusion in a police lineup, where she positively identified him. Bundy was arrested and charged with aggravated kidnapping and attempted criminal assault. First trial and conviction. Despite his arrest, Bundy's confidence and legal knowledge allowed him to mount an aggressive defense. He insisted on representing himself, a move that granted him more freedom in the courtroom. During the trial, Bundy exuded charm and charisma, attempting to sway the jury and the public. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and he was convicted and sentenced to 15 years in prison for the attempted kidnapping of Carol DaRonch. Escape and continued crimes. Bundy's first escape occurred on June 7, 1977, during a recess in his trial for the murder of Karen Campbell. Taking advantage of the judge's leniency, Bundy was allowed access to the courthouse law library, where he jumped from a second-story window and fled. His escape triggered a massive manhunt, but Bundy managed to evade capture for 8 days, during which he wandered the mountains without food or proper clothing before being recaptured. Undeterred, Bundy meticulously planned a second escape from the Garfield County Jail in December 1977. This time, he crawled through a hole he had sawed in the ceiling of his cell, accessing the jailer's apartment and walking out the front door. His escape went unnoticed for 17 hours, giving him a significant head start. Final capture. After his second escape, Bundy made his way to Florida, where he resumed his killing spree. On January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house at Florida State University, brutally assaulting 4 women, killing 2 of them. His final victim, 12-year-old Kimberly Leach, was abducted from her school on February 9, 1978. These heinous acts eventually led to his capture on February 15, 1978, when a patrol officer in Pensacola, Florida, recognized the stolen vehicle Bundy was driving. The infamous trials, a media sensation. Bundy's trials became media spectacles, the first of their kind to be televised nationally. The public was fascinated by Bundy's dual nature, the charming, articulate law student and the ruthless, cold-blooded killer. His ability to manipulate and deceive both inside and outside the courtroom captivated audiences and generated unprecedented media coverage. Defending himself. In both the Chi Omega and Kimberly Leach trials, Bundy chose to represent himself, using the platform to portray himself as a wronged man fighting an unjust system. His courtroom antics, including cross-examining witnesses and delivering impassioned arguments, were a stark contrast to the evidence presented against him. Despite his efforts, Bundy was convicted of all charges and sentenced to death. The final verdict. On July 24, 1979, Bundy was found guilty of the Chi Omega murders and sentenced to death. The following year, he was convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of Kimberly Leach. Bundy's charm and cunning could no longer shield him from the consequences of his actions. Despite numerous appeals and attempts to delay his execution, Bundy's fate was sealed. Conclusion: execution and legacy. Ted Bundy's execution on January 24, 1989, marked the end of one of America's most infamous criminal careers. His death was met with a mix of relief and macabre celebration as crowds gathered outside the Florida State Prison chanting, "Burn, Bundy, burn," and setting off fireworks. The execution was carried out by electric chair, a fitting end for a man who had caused so much pain and suffering. Reflecting on the horror, Bundy's legacy is one of terror and fascination. His ability to blend into society while committing unspeakable acts of violence continues to captivate and horrify the public. His case fundamentally changed the way law enforcement approaches serial crimes, leading to the development of more sophisticated profiling techniques and better coordination across jurisdictions. Lessons learned. The story of Ted Bundy serves as a grim reminder of the capacity for evil that can lurk behind even the most unassuming facades. It underscores the importance of vigilance and the need for a justice system that can adapt to the cunning and resourcefulness of those who seek to exploit its weaknesses. Bundy's life and crimes remain a chilling testament to the darkest corners of the human psyche. In the end, Bundy's downfall was brought about by a combination of his own arrogance and the tireless efforts of law enforcement officers who refused to let his charm and deception deter them from seeking justice. His capture, trials, and eventual execution mark one of the most significant chapters in the history of American criminal justice, leaving behind a legacy that will not soon be forgotten.